have no problems. The open lines, once we open them up, they work just fine. But for some reason, it just wants to hang and freeze. So let's try this one more time. And let's say, come on, guys. Let's get it in. It just is, it's stalling really, really bad.
Enter your 6-digit PIN number.
There we go.
Welcome, host. You are now in the host
There we
room
go.
and can
We're
manage
now
your callers
in.
from the call-in studio
Okay, so
web
I'm
interface.
gonna put the number up on the screen now, and that will give you an opportunity to call in. And let's see if I can find where the number is. See, these things are, you have to be prepared. There it is. So now the wild card line is open.
Absolute beginners came to Georgetown. They were wearing Harris tweed and pork pie hats. They'd slit your throat and throw you in the gutter. But it's all you can expect from men like that. The bus is bound for Niles Bend and Harbor. The ladies wear perfume to scar your nose. And the only way to reach them is to scare them. But of that you know little, I suppose. It's a magical and mystical performance as you perambulate right down the road, with your pockets full of stardust and perfection, and Jesus on your side and in your soul. She had rings on every finger and 10 bracelets, some touch with powers given by a sage. He had contemplated giving her his wristwatch. The time for him had long since gone its way. Of the city he would shuffle, while spinning on his heels and chewing beef. He had promised her he'd be a vegetarian, but he could not control his lust for meat. Some say she left the streets for greater glory, but others said that she was big with child. Whatever was the truth, it did not matter. He would hunt her down and cut her with his smile. Last time he was seen was by the pawn shop. He traded 2 gold teeth for a sack of corn, and he would plant it on the outskirts of the city as a warning that he would someday return. Said he never found her and he's still looking. It is said he searches rivers for some sign, but the truth is that he caught her down in Georgetown with a Spaniard who had left his wife behind.
You're listening to Ripon Common Sense Radio.
That's right, where we take you well into the midnight hour with our special Art Bell Archives show
happening tonight and every night this weekend, starting at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central. Tune in as we open up the Art Bell archives and dive into the lost classics of a vocal treasure. We take a look at those stories and we bring them up to date and we share them with you. We ask for your input and your shout-outs, your call-ins, as we go through the most amazing stories ever told. Tune in tonight and every night as we reinvestigate the Art Bell Archives live.
The Art Bell Archive Show. 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central, RiponCommonSense.com.
Ripon Rabbit Hole is a community-driven radio. At times the community comments may reveal prejudices and other beliefs that we or our sponsors do not condone. Views or opinions expressed by the community, callers, or guests, are those of the individual speaking and do not represent the views or opinions of this site. Ripon Common Sense content is intended for mature audiences only. Enjoy. The captain has turned on the seatbelt sign.
Let's do it. Whee! Good evening and welcome to another episode of the Ripon Rabbit Hole Live Show. I'm your host, AJ, the Ripon Rabbit. Give yourselves a round of applause for being smart enough to be here as we kick things off with the weekend right and dive deep down the rabbit hole into the world of intuition insight. Intuition, the ability to understand something immediately without the need for conscious reasoning. Some people call it a sixth sense. Science has studied it. The military has implemented it. Intuition insight, something perhaps buried within all of us, including you. We're going to take a look at tips and guides that can help us harness our inner intuition. So buckle up your seatbelts, folks, because tonight we're going on an intuitive journey. Thursday, April 9th, 2020. Now, I've had feelings within my gut before where I just kind of got the feeling I knew what was going to happen before it happened. And I had that ability to understand something right in that moment, almost immediately, without actually consciously reasoning it. So by definition, intuition is something I believe is inherent in all of us. And yet I sure would like to learn how to harness that ability. Wouldn't you? Or perhaps you already have. Have you learned how to listen to your inner voice? Do you ever wonder if you can rely on your intuition or even whether you're intuitive at all? We're going to get into all of that tonight. But first, Patrick Roberts was the first one in the chat room this evening, so a big top hats off to you, Patrick. You had a battle, and coming in second, close second, was Jen Grant. And it's fun to see how the weekend gets kicked off here on Thursday nights at the Ripon Rabbit Hole. Welcome, My Life. Great to see you bleed the same. Dark Wolf's Den. Sabian joining us this evening. Great to see you as well, Jen Grant, as Rawl. And we've got, a lot of interesting lineup this week for all of these episodes. This is going to be a great weekend. I see Machiavelli Kilumilati. If I said that wrong, I apologize. I see Stober 51, of course, as well, joining us this evening so we can dive down that rabbit hole together, because tonight that's exactly what we're going to do in intuition. But I, again, have to start off with, how was your week? Did everyone have a fantastic week? I know I did. It went by so fast, and Thursday night was here in the blink of an eye. It literally feels like Sunday just kind of joins in Thursday once that show starts and the wheels lift off and we've buckled our seatbelts. It just seems like that time just kind of melds together At least it does for me in this moment. I'm excited to report to you that we had our first balloon come back as we launched balloons last week. I'm really surprised. We got a response from a traveler on a hiking path in southern Nevada who came across one of our balloons, one of our messages. So it was really exciting to see that something we talked about last weekend actually we put into practice this week, and it was really exciting to get the response from Terry, who shared just beautiful photos of where the balloon was found. So really exciting stuff. And also on Ripon Rabbit Hole this week, and today, as a matter of fact, we published a story about a two-headed goat in Wisconsin. Now, if you haven't seen the photo, you'll want to check out riponrabbithole.com, where you will see with your own eyes the world's first, maybe the world's first, either way, the first I've ever heard in Wisconsin, a two-headed goat. Unbelievable. It really was. Yes, Patrick Roberts, our new timeline. Maybe you and Dark Wolf Den will go head to head for the Fun King Award this month in April. Of course, that's going to be next weekend. We're going to do our Fun King show of April. And of course, Dark Wolf's Den, Jerry, is the March version of the Fantastic Fun King. So to you, Sir King, I bow. Do you consider yourself to be intuitive? Do you listen to your intuition, your inner voice? Put a 1 in the chat room if you consider yourself to be of intuitive personality, intuitive in nature, and if you listen to that feeling that comes from within, because this is how to trust sense. And this topic becomes very popular throughout our work, our relationships, our friendships. Intuition as a gut feeling based on experience has been found to be useful for business leaders in making judgment about people, culture, and strategy. Law enforcement officers often claim to observe suspects and immediately know instincts kick in. Or perhaps we've been taught to believe that rationality is what should always prevail when making decisions. But what about that inner voice, that gut feeling, that little something instinctive from within that tells us how we feel beneath those layers of logic?
You've probably all had this experience where you thought of an old friend and you receive a text message from them that same day, or you run into them on the street. Or maybe when you saw the weather forecast and it said no rain, but you still brought an umbrella when you left the house. And then it did in fact start to rain later that day. These small everyday situations derive from our intuition. And it can seem like pure coincidence, but there is a bigger meaning with it.
I do believe that. I do believe that there is a bigger meaning to it. And of course, you agree as well. Moneybags73, welcome with a 1. Dark Wolf's Den, Jerry with a 1. My Life with a 1. Sabian with a 1. Michael Fontaine with a 1. Stober51 with a 1. Jen Grant saying always 1. Bleed the Same with a 1. So you guys already are in tune and you feel that inner voice. And that's something great. It's spectacular to see that so many of you consider yourself to be intuitive, because in today's day and age, that really is at work. Our intuition really comes into play. And have any of those specific examples ever taken place? Have you ever gotten at somebody that you just thought about? Have you had? Welcome, Z Rabbit. So great to see you. here for the weekend. Bleed the same. My intuition is usually right, she says. I agree with you. There is something that happens deep down within your inner gut, within your perhaps soul, where sometimes your little voice inside your head says, hey, listen to me. And that's subconscious voice, in a way, that connects with our subconscious and our, especially when you are a parent, Michael Fontaine. I agree with you. As a parent myself, I could see my son walking the slide backwards, and moments before he tumbled backwards, stepped off. So there is that wish, especially when you are a parent. 51 asking, is anyone else having put a shoes? Put a 1. Jen, interesting to think that way, but so many people in the chat room considering themselves to be of an intuitive spirit or an intuitive reason people experience the mentality, which is definitely bad, and I don't know what I can do about that to reset the broadcast. But perhaps if you refresh the broadcast, perhaps that will bring. So I'm going to try this. I'm going to go ahead and go back to this. It could be more time and come back on, which I have now restarted the broadcast on the YouTube just to see. We're getting monitor. I thought it was me. I reset my phone. Still issues. Never mind. The website is skipping to.
Dragon to me in my head. So it's as crazy as seeing the skipper on Gilligan's Island with a black hat. You know, it was always a white hat.
And how is that now? If we don't have any skipping this time, then that should be good. We've restarted all. There'd be an echo because I had to turn on the studio monitor, which brought in my own feed a little bit later. But put your hands in the air with your best emoji that represents that. If this is now corrected the problem, if we are now skip free, put your hands in the air with a 1, throw up one of those emojis, a thumb up, or a big smile. Still issues, says Lee Burton. Boy, I don't know what to say. I've exhausted all of my options on this end. And Patrick Roberts, our new timeline. Sounds like, I got to count back the 7 seconds here, so we could be in the clear zone. as we speak with a 1. There we go. Dark Wolf's Den. Can we have somebody else confirm? There we go. Thumbs up. There we go. The hands are up. Jen Grant, thank you. Michael Fontaine, thank you. Bleed the Same. Thank you, My Life. Hopefully that does it. So keep an eye out, and if we start to skip again, please let me know, and I will go through the process that I just went through. I basically restarted everything, which is a little nuts. But either way, as we explored some of these options, you maybe get that telephone call, or you get that text message from someone, and they say, this is a person, so emojis and claps and all that good stuff. It's fun. Connection between the subconscious and the conscious. That would indicate that there is something at work with the brain, and that would require a little bit of science.
So why should we trust that it is in fact intuition and not just pure coincidence that can drive us toward the right choices? This whole topic has received in the past few decades. They found they've made sufficient
It's quite common and underreported, and that would be where people they know for sure they should be dead, but they never had that feeling of waking up and feeling like they are dead. What I'm describing is they've been in some kind of an oncoming vehicular collision that was inevitable. There was nowhere to go. It was curtains. I mean, it was over. They knew it. That was the last thing they're looking at. And I've given talks on this topic and then been surprised to be approached by huge numbers of people. Like in a group of 60 people, 6 would come and tell me that same thing happened to me. I've never told anyone else because they feel like they'd be crazy. There is sort of a quantum, if you will, corollary or connection here, because there are things called quantum tunneling, quantum teleportation, because what these people experience is they're facing an oncoming 18-wheeler. There's nowhere to go. It's a skinny road. It's over. They're going to be smushed. But the next thing they know, they've somehow traded places. There was no room to do that, but now they did that. And they're inexplicably, the next thing they know, they've somehow traded places. There was no room to do that.
And that actually was a rebroadcast, and the replay was clear, which was Cynthia Sue Larson. And we're going to hear now. You might hear a little echo as I turn up the. Okay. So I don't believe that I have an echo any longer. And I don't believe I'm skipping again, but keep me in the loop if I start to skip as we go back through this one more time with the science and the brain of intuition.
in fact intuition and not just pure coincidence. The whole topic has received increasing interest from scientists in the past few decades. Proof is here.
Whatever you believe is real is real. Going to the area code 425 on the wild card line, you're on the air with Cynthia Sue Larson and Moneybags 73. Go ahead, 425.
Hello, my name is Peter, and I am a software developer, quantum mechanic specialist for the clock, I've done lots of developing, and I want to give a shout out to Moneybags for basically reminding me my whole quantum reality and where I fit into the whole ballpark of the whole grand scheme of things. Tunes.org was a developing website that I found a way to hack the clock and break into 1993 from the year 2004, and I tried to blow a whistle. I've had Secret Service over at my house a couple times. I tried to get a job at the CIA. They didn't want me. You wonder why. But basically, I watched all of the videos on 9/11, World Trade Centers, and I hadn't actually developed the software for Microsoft Money 99, Microsoft Money 99, Office 2000, USB 2.0. These were like basically my software programs, because I found a quantum gate in USB 1.1, and it needed an update to 2.0. And so I figured out how to make these things 3D and how all the code works. And so I engineered Yahoo's basically the web engine for 2.0, and then 3.0, and then 3.14 is where I got with the XE when I made the moonflower.jpg for Windows XE, and the basically the Internet Explorer 7.1.
Okay. Now we're back again after a full reboot. Yes, the clock guy is fantastic. See if we're doing it now, because I'm monitoring my replay. Remarkable. The live copying the frame. Testing 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, it's really bad. Really.
And he looked at it and he was like, "That's weird. It looks off." And I was like, "Yeah." I was like, "I never noticed that before." So 3 months later, which was a few days ago, or like a week ago, I was showing him the same pictures, and we noticed the Marriott World Trade Center Hotel. And I was like, that's what, because I saw Moneybags' video, and I was like, that's Photoshop. So I had to see his, video, and I was like, no freaking way that hotel is there. I was like, so I showed him the same pictures and the same videos that I showed him 3 months earlier, and he was like, what the hell? And he's from New York, right? He was dumbfounded. He was blown away. I was literally blown away, because I was like, never in the 19 years had I seen that footage, that clip, ever. And I was just like, oh my gosh.
I felt the same way.
For me, it was a JFK 4 in a car, 6 in a car that was the number one. Now this one is the number one.
I agree.
World Trade Center Hotel.
And something as significant as that event in our timeline, Cynthia, did it really happen? Did it even really happen anymore? I mean, where are we on these types of residues with these stripes the caller is speaking of that Moneybags did the video on this hotel?
When you say did it happen, you mean 9/11 itself, or the? Yeah,
9/11. Did it really? Are we living in a world that it happened? To just not even happen? Like, I mean, we know it happened, but is that perhaps the moment when all this shifted? Was it some great traumatic nationwide experience or worldwide experience, perhaps, that split us and sent us into different parallel realities that blend with each other? I mean, again, I kind of feel a little bit like Art Bell in that way, where I want answers, and I think, how do you explain this?
Well, riffing off of what Moneybags was saying earlier, I love it because he is going back to the ancient indigenous wisdom. There's a lot of
Check 1 2. Are we coming through now? Man, I'll tell you what. That's what happens with live radio, is that you just never know. Are we still skipping? We should have excellent. Put a 1 in the chat room. Tonight is April 9th. We're live. Is it coming through? Hopefully, we have excellent. I lowered the bit rate. Since we're not pushing audio, that should be good. Oh, wait, maybe. Today with Tom Hanks. Tom Hanks, as you had tried to reach out to his publicist, Cynthia, Tom Hanks has had several Mandela effects related to the lines of his films and the movies that he's been in. So what gravitates subjects like the 9/11 or like Tom Hanks to where multiple Mandela effects kind of come together? Is it one spawns another? Are they like magpie that when you get them wet after midnight they multiply? Is that what happens, or what is the thought process there?
One thing I have noticed in my research is that the more we start observing this phenomenon, the more likely we're to see more of it. So that definitely does happen. And so if we're looking at a certain area like 9/11 and paying attention to it, it goes, I think we could expect that there would be some more further changes along the way.
Thank you, caller. We appreciate your call this evening. Excellent to remind us of that particular series of videos. Now, Moneybags, when you were doing this, did them in sequential order? I seem to remember that the hurricane was first, and then was the lines, and then was the hotel. Now, you were looking at the building for however long it took you to edit these videos. You didn't notice these stripes, or they weren't there?
No, that's how this works. That's the same thing with the Tin Man. Recently, there's been a whole bunch of videos done on the Tin Man, and all of a sudden a collar popped up, and then some blue eyeshadow, and people remember a hatch for the chest to take out the heart. All this stuff is changing, and someone can't say, well, you haven't looked at The Wizard of Oz or the Tin Man in 20 years. No, we've been concentrating on the Tin Man, and he continues to change. So it's the same thing. There's something with the Tin Man, industrial Tin Man, and then the World Trade Center towers. Maybe because there's so many people concentrating on these things from a long time ago. You know, the towers have been gone almost 20 years. They haven't existed yet. They're changing in the past. I mean, it's really bizarre. I wanted to say real quick on the hurricane, I had a bunch of people say, well, you're just not familiar with the work of Judy Wood, because Judy Wood talked about the hurricane. Well, that was several years later. So I think that's when they heard about the hurricane. A lot of people heard about J.C. Penney changing 10 years ago. It was just 4 years.
Huge 1/4 of the experiencers of the Mandela effect. And if you take all the NF types together collectively, then it's way out of proportion. Like 1/3 of the population is seeing 2/3 of the Mandela effect shifts. So I haven't looked at race. I haven't seen that as being much. I haven't seen a difference personally. I know just as many people proportionately who are African American or Asian who are experiencing this. And I've had reports from all around the world, from Asia, Africa, everywhere. So I don't think it's exclusively a Caucasian phenomenon, although there are some phrases in Norwegian and other languages having to do with time loops, for example. Vartjeger is an expression that's commonly used in Norway, and then the Danish have an expression, and they're familiar with the phenomenon where people are heard or experienced before they arrive. But there are phenomena in other parts of the planet as well, so it's not just Scandinavians. The Brazilians often see people after they've died. They might.
Okay. We should be completely now. As bizarre reboot zone. It really, Cynthia, you and your appearance on Art is what connected Moneybags and I together, and with the dual representation of where we are in this day. And if you look at the moon tonight, you see half light, half dark. It's very symbolic for where we are in 2020.
At that tipping point.
At that tipping point. And I'm elated to have you here, and I welcome you back on anytime you'd like to come when your book is nearing the ending of the and you're ready to release. I'd love to have you on, and maybe you could even read a little bit of the book for us.
Love that. I'd definitely be back. Thanks so much. It's been so.
Okay, so we're back after several reboots and several times redoing. That's Cynthia. Hopefully, my live now is not skipping. You may have to hit your refresh. You may have to refresh your video, if that could be put in the chat room. I'm going to turn down my studio monitor here. Refresh video. Boy, that's wild. Let's hope we're not skipping. Yeah, but we are skipping. So even after all the reboots on my end, even after everything I've gone through, I still am not getting a signal through. So it tells me it's on a much bigger end than mine. Again, very confused. Now, Ripon Rabbit Hole seems to, on the radio broadcast, seems to be coming through just fine. I'm not getting that skipping over there at Ripon Common Sense Radio. And some, claiming that they're getting nothing, and some say that they hear me. It does seem good now. Refresh the video. Okay, perhaps we're back there. But I can say that when we took that little break to reboot, let's remind ourselves that the stream came through on the Ripon Rabbit Hole through the web player there. The radio seemed to be okay, although it did skip a few times. I'm getting from some of you that at least it sounds good now, AJ, for right now. So let's hold our fingers crossed in that ritual that we do, that we can move on, because this tonight's information is so amazing. I've prepared this to, really share with you. So let's hope that we maintain this stream. And let's use our intuition. Something tells me that we just got hit by a bunch of solar flares or something, because not only was YouTube down, but my cell phone went down too. My actual phone went down. So maybe perhaps we did have some sort of a solar blast of some sort that hit us. And of course the Schumann resonance reader, which I haven't checked, but I did see some of you were saying that it goes through. So let's talk back again. Let's just continue on as if everything is working just fine and talk about the science and the brain behind,
and not just pure coincidence that can drive us toward the right choices. This whole topic has received increasing interest from scientists in the past few decades. They've made sufficient discoveries to really prove that this intuition in fact does exist. Scientist and Nobel Prize winner Daniel Kahneman wrote the book Thinking Fast and Thinking Slow. Here he explained how the brain has two different operating systems, System 1 and System 2, also known from other studies as right brain or left brain. System 1 is our fast thinking and often very subconscious way of operating, where feeling and intuition dominates. System 2 is our slower, more analytical way of operating, where logic and reason dominates. System 1 has been proved to know the right answer long before System 2 in a wide range of situations. For example, once a study was analyzing car purchases. The study showed that people who had to make a quick intuitive decision about their car purchase were later on found to be satisfied with their purchase 60% of the time. Meanwhile, those buyers who really had a lot of time to think carefully about all the different information about the various car choices were later on found to only be satisfied 25% of the time.
Now, I absolutely love scientific experiments like this that produce data. In fact, I've been known from time to time throughout the program to do these on-air experiments. And of course, tonight, a perfect opportunity to do another one. So we're going to find out, we're going to gauge how intuitive you are. And we've got a very clever way to do that if you're paying attention to us on the YouTube channel, Ripon Rabbit Hole. If you're listening on Ripon Common Sense Radio, you're going to have to go to the show notes. So that's Ripon.
You are listening to Ripon Common Sense Radio.
That's right, where we take you well into the midnight hour with our special Art Bell Archives show happening tonight and every night this weekend, starting at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central. Tune in as we open up the Art Bell Archives and dive into the lost classics of a vocal treasure. We take a look at those stories and we bring them up to date and we share them with you. We ask for your input and your shout-outs, your call-ins as we go through the most amazing stories ever told. Tune in tonight and every night as we reinvestigate the Art Bell Archives live.
The Art Bell Archive Show, 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central, RiponCommonSense.com.
To the good old days where a part of you is with me still, and I hear your call through the whippoorwill. Could it be you trying to say to me, you're
How about now? Are we back now? This is so crazy. A person's signature over and over and over. I think we just got kicked to the radio broadcast. I think you did. Are we back now? I can't tell what's live and what's not. This is just nuts. We should be live. Are we live? I think we're back. It's coming back. It's a huge delay. Huge delay. There's like, normally, when all of this happened, we went to a 7-second delay, like 2 weeks ago. And now we're at like a 15-second delay. And it's so crazy because it's such a distant I can't tell when I turn on my monitor. I can't tell if we're on or not because we're 7 seconds off. Okay, what is the picture? Obviously, none of you heard me during this on-air experiment. It just went to music on the radio, and you've seen this picture. So my picture is to use your imagination, or I'm sorry, your intuition. I'm all thrown off and flustered tonight. Use your intuition to tell me if what you're looking at is a picture that was done by a famous artist or a child. Which one do you believe? Do you believe it was a famous artist or a child? And I don't know now. Now we have to wait 15 seconds for you guys to respond. And we're clipping again. None of you heard me. Here we go. So now you can hear me on my own loop. Do you see that? So it should be coming through. According to my preview, it should be coming through. Scribbling says bleed the same. The question is this a famous artist or was this done by a child? Sabian says an artist. So at least we're coming through. We got one answer. Yes, Dark Wolf's Den comes in with an artist. A famous artist using intuition to solve the riddle. Bleed the same with artist. Yes, a child, says Patrick Roberts, our new timeline. Ink pen tied to a dog's tail, says Stober51. I'm going to say a famous artist, says My Life. Patrick Roberts, our new timeline, already winning one of the challenges this evening. Could he take this one away? You're going to hear that echo for a second. The reality is, if your intuition told you that this was a famous piece of art, then your intuition was absolutely correct.
The answer? It's a work by the painter Cy Twombly.
Cy Twombly did this art, and it's actually a famous piece of art, which is really incredible when you think about it. You know, that's intuition to tell us this answer. So how about this one? Take a good look at this.
Which of these two people was on the Titanic? What does your intuition tell you?
Which of these two people were on the Titanic? Either the female or the male. Well, in this reality's bananas tapped into the wall is famous art. That's true. As we look now, which of these two individuals was on the Titanic? Hello, 4. Good to see you. Yay. Woohoo, we're coming through. But we're coming through 15 seconds later. So when I ask questions, just to wait for the answers from you guys to come in. We're on the Titanic. There we go. So now the question should be coming through. So now apparently we're like 30 seconds. Dark Wolf's Den with an A. The guy on the right, both, question mark, says Stober. Dirk, the male. Bleed the Same, the female. Jen Grant with both. Michael Fontaine, the female. Using your intuition now to answer the question the best that you can. Dark Wolf's Den says the female. Perhaps this is Jack and what's her name from the Titanic? Rose? Is this Jack, perhaps, and Rose? Is this a love story where they both were on the Titanic? Perhaps.
The answer? The man. His name is Frederick Fleet, and he was one of the first people on the Titanic to discover that the ship had collided with an iceberg.
So there you go. The man, or B, as the answer would be, the male, was the one that was on the Titanic. The female had nothing to do with the Titanic whatsoever. And he was one of the first men to actually see and report the iceberg, which is a perhaps intuition of his own, perhaps. Jen Grant with the female coming in a little bit late as that delay, and that delay is really huge tonight. So let's look at these people here. Now focus your intuition on these two individuals.
The answer? The man. His name is Fred.
Oh, wait. No. Frederick. That's the guy. Okay, here we go. These two. Say shout out Laz Sloshtown. Shout out Laz Sloshtown. Woohoo, 2 for 2, says My Life. All right, so now we look at these two individuals. Think carefully and use your inner insight. Use your intuition to answer the question.
Which one of these people is a schizophrenic? The old man or the man with the friendly smile? Think you can figure it out?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm just going to count down the delay. Can you figure it out? Which one is the schizophrenic? The left or the right? The left or the right? And use your intuition. Use your human insight, your instinct, and look at these images to really try to tone that muscle that you have, that intuition inside you. I know them both, says Jen Grant. So you think they both were a schizophrenic? I know these men. You know them both, like personally? Okay, Jen, hold off on your answer just yet then, if you know. My electric off, but we'll listen. Hi all. JoJo's, why is your electric off? Things are really weird tonight. Patrick Roberts, my timeline friends. On the right, B, friendly smile. 2, guy on the right, Smiley. Smiley is the schizophrenic. Fuck you then, Smiley. I love it. Earth Daughter, the one on the right, the younger guy. Young guy on the right, the friendly smile. Could be the schizophrenic. The guy on the right, Sabian even saying the right. Maya C says the left. Now, Maya C, perhaps your intuition is spot on because some of you may have spent a lot of time around a schizophrenic.
The answer? The old man. That's John Nash, an American mathematician and Nobel Prize winner.
So there you go. Not just a schizophrenic, a Nobel Prize winner, an American mathematician. However, Smiley guy could perhaps be a stereotype for schizophrenia. And you might look at him and you might say to yourself, oh, that's the schizophrenic. And your intuition can be off. Your intuition can be wrong. And that's what's important about this experiment, this on-air experiment tonight, to gauge what of our intuitions are accurate and how they can possibly be deceived. Now, look closely at these two boys. What you can't see is what they look like today. Okay? So these two boys similar in their age when this photo was taken. Here's the question.
Which of these two boys has become a very famous football star? What's your intuition say?
Now, football meaning soccer in this case. Okay, so which of these two boys grew up to become a very famous soccer player? Do, 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 do. That might trigger the copyright alert. I better not do that. Anyways, which of these two grew up to be a big-time soccer player? Dirk, being schizophrenic doesn't mean you can't be smart. That's absolutely correct, Dirk. I'm sorry. Actually, for that one, I used David Hawkins' kinesiology testing method. Very intriguing, Maya C. I thought the old man, but thought Smiley looked like G. Yes, the bigger left kid, says Stober51 on the soccer question. I knew that was son of Sam, says Jen Grant, Earth Daughter to Jen Grant. The left coming in from Dirk. Jen Grant saying the right. Patrick's timeline saying the right. Sabian says, hey, man, I have no idea. Maya C this time going with the right. The kid on the left from Lee Burton, Earth Daughter. Dark Wolf's Den, fuck you then from the left. Beckham, says Michael Fontaine. Let's hear the answer.
The boy in the red shirt, his name, Lionel Messi. This picture of him was taken in 1992.
Now, it wasn't Beckham, it was Messi, but if you said the left, you were absolutely correct. He grew up left Dutch shirt. Yes, Dirk. Left. Very good. Okay, so for the final on-air experiment tonight, we're going to take everything we've understood from these experiments so far, and we're going to wrap in our intuition. We're really going to focus on the challenge before us. We're really going to key in. We're going to think about the false positives. We're going to think about the accuracies, and we're going to blend them together to really try to use our instincts, our intuition, our personal insight to determine this final question. There they are. Take a good look at them.
Which of these two people, the man or the woman, is a criminal? Figured it out?
Which of these two is a criminal? The man or the woman? Which one of these two is a criminal? And that's what's so intriguing when you think about putting these into perspective in daily life when you come across things. Both of them, says fuck you then. Here we go. For the main price, that's right. Same nose. They do kind of look a little bit like they could be brothers and sisters, or brother and sister. Hello, Prelim. Great to see you. We've had such technical difficulties. It's amazing we're still here. I'm so impressed. So which one of these two is the criminal? The female or the male? JoJo's is going to go with the female. Patrick Roberts is going to go with the male. Dirk is going to go with the female. The cat ate my homework, going with the female. Care looks like her mugshot, so going with the female. Patrick Roberts, our new timeline, going with the man. My life going with the girl. Maya C going with the woman. Sabian going with the left or the woman. Earth Daughter with the woman. Michael Fontaine with the left or the woman. Lee Burton with the left or the woman. As we look at this answer, it may shock you.
The man, Ian Brady, and his partner killed 5 children in Manchester from 1956 to 1963.
Now, that one shocked me too, I gotta say. But there we go. In 2 very specific situations, we had false positives from an overwhelming majority of you. which shows to me in the insignificant soccer player things, the intuition's really good. But in sometimes the real judge of the person comes into the ability to be face to face with someone like that criminal or someone like who went down on the Titanic. Perhaps those types of seriousnesses can come from that kind of a study, from our internal instinct, our intuition, what our insight tells us. Yeah, bad guy, right? An absolute bad guy. And Earth Daughter upset. And I'm the only one, so they're laughing out loud, says Patrick Roberts, our new timeline. You hit your intuition right. You gauged the false narrative. You looked at the false positive. You intook your personal intuition to create the answer. And perhaps that was a coincidence. Perhaps it was a 50-50. However, if you really embraced the experiment and you really used your intuition to come up with your answer, then your odds are a little higher. Avoiding stereotyping doesn't always work, says Dirk. And I say you're absolutely right. As JoJo says, she looks guilty. I agree. She does look guilty. Nah, this set up as a game, so people are going for the least expected, Sabian. I really tried to balance it out, to have a good, fair mix. But one of the things that I know that influences our decisions, especially when it comes time to critical instinct, critical insight, critical intuition that could perhaps save our lives, comes with the rate of speed that the life will come to us.
Do you feel like too much is changing too fast, and it's harder and harder to keep up? Maybe it's the news, or never feeling like you have enough time to read and know all that you ought to. After all, 90% of all the data in the world was created in the last 2 years. Maybe it's what to study, or what your kids should study, given that a college degree no longer guarantees a good job. 35% of all the skills deemed important today will have changed in 5 years. And automation portends to eliminate hundreds of millions of jobs within our lifetimes. Maybe it's what growing old will look like. Or maybe it's simply new apps for your phone that completely change how you used to do things. I see and feel this in my own life. Every day is a deluge of new information. No 2 days are the same. I find myself living the cliche that change is my only constant. I see this with my friends who wonder whether their children protesting is the new normal, or when the next climate calamity will hit where they live. There's no way to really know today what tomorrow holds. I reckon many of you feel this too. So many things are changing so fast, and our utter inability to predict or control them. For the past few years, I've been diving deep into this sense of not knowing and continuous change. I call it flux. Today, I'd like to offer you what I've learned. But first, how did we get here? How did this world of flux come about? My view is that for the last few centuries, we've lived in a fixed world. By fixed, I mean permanent, predictable, controllable, or at least for those with a shred of power, the belief that we could control things and change them with our own sheer will. So politically, we created borders to separate people and cultures. In business, we built bigger-than-life factories with a vision they'd last forever. We structured most corporations as top-down hierarchies with fixed chains of command and walled gardens of control. At home, we relied on a tight-knit nuclear family and sacred bonds of kinship. These bonds often extended to work as well. If you came from a family of cobblers, you were a cobbler. If you came from a family of bankers, you were a banker. If you had the privilege of studying for a different profession, regardless, you could aspire to and often rely on lifetime employment. And when change did happen, it took longer to take root. Keeping up was slower. The effects of the first industrial revolution took more than 100 years to be fully felt. That's 5 generations. In this era, in nearly every sense, we developed a fixed mindset, a state of mind that assumes that we and the world don't change. And yet, today's world is constant flux. Things are changing far more quickly than they used to. No wonder it feels hard to keep up. There's a big disconnect. Nation states are in flux. Of the 10 largest populations in the world today, only 2 are nation states. 8 are digital platforms. Borders are in flux. True, we have more physical border barriers than ever, from 7 at the end of World War II to 77 today. Yet technology is searing through borders that historically policies, work visas, and lack of connectivity kept us apart. Climate is in flux. As temperatures rise and glaciers melt, we have a sense that environmental crisis is approaching, but we don't know exactly when the tipping point will hit. Business is in flux. The average lifetime of a corporation has plummeted from more than 60 years in the 1950s to less than 20 years today. CEO tenure has plunged as well, with leaders forced out by impatient shareholders after a year or 2. Expectations are in flux. They're rising and diminishing simultaneously. On the one hand, we're capable of achieving more than ever with unprecedented tools and technologies at our fingertips. On the other hand, in some fundamental ways, we're less equipped than ever to survive. Think about it. The smartphone is only 12 years old. It has revolutionized almost every aspect of life and made us far more dependent. Perhaps most of all, the future is in flux. A predictable life cycle no longer holds. We're even starting to edit species. And it's not just change itself, it's the pace of change. Any one of these shifts would be hard enough to grasp, much less keep up with. But all of them at once and accelerating velocity? Like, holy moly, no, right? And yet, this is it. This is who and where we are today. And so our minds fall into anxiety. We worry about today and fear the future. The more change and uncertainty we experience, the more we grasp for what's no longer there.
Very wise words from April Rhine, a talk that was given at the beginning of this year in January, just as the C word was beginning to break out across the world. This brings up some very interesting points when it comes to our intuition and why today it's so important to really harvest and harness to the best of our ability, our own gut feelings and our own intuition. Because in the days and the weeks and the months that lie ahead, in fact, the years that lie ahead, the world is going to continue to change at such rapid rates that we have to have a defense mechanism in place. And I'm suggesting that the best defense mechanism we have is our own inner voice, intuition.
But not only does science prove it, there's also clear evidence of this intuition in the business world. Successful leaders and inventors know that they have to trust their intuition just as much as their intellect if they want to succeed. The world is moving so fast today, and unforeseen situations are happening more frequently. No data can possibly keep up with this speed of information and be there to serve the right answer when a crisis hits. But not only that, in order to invent something new, you have to go beyond your existing knowledge. So how can we all use to listen to this intuition? How can we all learn to listen to this intuition? I believe that there's 3 essential steps in order to develop intuition in your mind. You need general information, and it's important to sort your thoughts into what you need and what you don't need, and not spend too much energy on thoughts that are not relevant or things you cannot change. When you have a clear mind, you develop more awareness. And it's important to know that all the thoughts we have are stored in our subconscious. And the thoughts we have often will have an impact on where our intuition guides us. Because they're stored in our subconscious, even thoughts that we quickly forget again, they're still stored there, and we don't have any logic to filter if we want them or not. So therefore, our thoughts become our habits. Secondly, you need to be honest with yourself. If you're not honest about what's really important to you, you risk to not hear your own inner voice, but you will hear everyone else's voice clearer. So have a clear intention about what you really want, otherwise your intuition can't guide you. You need to train it like a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it becomes. Our intuition is purely based on emotion, and it derives from things that has already happened to us. For example, when we're kids and we burn ourselves on something hot, and there was steam coming from this, the next time we see a cup of coffee, we will know not to touch it because it's hot. Not because we know already that coffee is hot, but because our intuition remembers that everything that comes steam from equals things that hurts. So the more you dare to use it often, to try something new, the more accurate it can become. Now, we've heard so often before, we only have one life, let's make the most of it. And making the most of life is not only about how much money you make, what job title you have, how many kids you have, or if you're married by the time you're 30. What's essential is what's your truth, and what is making most of life for you. What really makes you happy, and that's what matters. There's a wonderful story about a nurse called Bronnie Ware. She spent 12 years caring for terminally ill patients during the last 3 to 12 weeks of their lives. During that time, the elderly told her what their biggest regrets in life were. And this is the list. The number one thing that people regret right before they die is that they didn't have the courage to live a life that was true to them. They lived a life according to other people's expectations. I believe that if we tune into our intuition and we listen to it more often, we hear our own inner voice and we come a lot closer to finding that courage.
Intuition is a muscle. More important, it has memory. Work that muscle, build that memory, gain that experience so that we can tune tighter the ability to listen to our inner voice. It's exciting when you take the experiment that we did and you think about those types of challenges and way to work that muscle. Now is a great time. Right now, focusing our intuition while we're amongst ourselves in our sacred places, it could be the most valuable muscle we're toning. I know, with the couch and the Netflix and all of the mind-wasting days that we've had, it would be helpful and beneficial to tune in from time to time to that inner voice. Just because we're not out and experiencing that voice amongst others doesn't mean we can't take that time to harvest it now. Put a 1 in the chat room if you can agree with that. I can agree with those emojis My Life put in. We have to exercise the intuition muscle. Sherry S., welcome. Feels biblical to me. Agreeing with her, says Earth Daughter. I hear you. Jojo says too fast. Way too fast. As Dirk says, we laughed at our grandparents when they said it was all going too fast. If we experience that, everything is going too fast. How about our kids? Excellent point, Dirk. Excellent point. I'd get in that time machine. I'd get in that DeLorean and get the flux capacitor up to 88 miles an hour, Marty, so we can get back to that good old time of the 80s or the 90s, maybe even the 70s or the 60s. Unblock intuition. Prelim, I couldn't agree with you more. We need to unlock it. We need to harness it. We need to ride it through the upcoming days, weeks, months, and years. Earth Daughter with a 1. Lee Bouton with a 1. Time has speed up. It does. it speeds up fast. My life with a 1. As we get older, we have more memories, meaning the day ends, it can't compare to all the other days, making it seem to pass faster than days before, says Stober51. I couldn't agree with you more. I think we're living in an accelerated time frame, which is why our intuition insight, our sixth sense, is so important to us.
Now, it's the exact same thing in life. If you're not honest with yourself about what you really want, it can be hard to find the motivation to really succeed. You might end up setting your priorities according to the expectations or the norms of society, and not according to yourself.
What is it that you really want? What are your priorities? What does your inner voice tell you should be doing? We're at the bottom of the first half of the program. We'll be back with more Intuition Insight on Ripon Common Sense Radio after this quick break. Don't touch that dial. Are you enjoying the program so far? I know I am. If you've enjoyed it up to this point, make sure you thumb up that video, hit that subscribe button, and ring that bell. You'll get our notifications every time we go live, which happens every Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday night here at the Ripon Rabbit Hole. I'll be back again tomorrow night, April 10th, starting at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central, for Magic Frequencies, an amazing look at frequencies and how they're used in both good and bad ways. Then Saturday, April 11th, we dive into the fascinating world of deja vu. If you get the feeling that we've done this episode before, that is deja vu. And then we'll close out Sunday, April 12th, as we continue our series on hidden ancient locations. This time we look at ancient Ripon, Wisconsin. It's going to be a fascinating look as that series continues. If you've joined us for ancient Cahokia and ancient Aztlan, you should be excited to see where the rabbit hole goes. If you haven't done so already, make sure you visit our website over at riponrabbithole.com. That's RIPON, rabbithole.com. Make sure you subscribe to our mail list. We'll send you out our weekend schedule every Thursday morning. Like I told you, we're here every Thursday through Sunday evening, spending the weekends with you, giving you the very best in Ripon Common Sense Radio. While you're over there, make sure that you check out the Backstage VIP Lounge. There's a chat area set up for you where the conversation continues after the show in the VIP Chat Lounge. It's a lot of fun there at riponrabbithole.com. With the Backstage VIP Lounge, I've met international listeners from all over the world, and I look forward to meeting you. So if you haven't done so already, make sure that you visit us over there at the website. Join the community, be involved in our ever-growing population of rabbits. We're going to continue to dive down this rabbit hole tonight with Intuition Insight as we continue the scientific study of why we need to listen to our inner voice, our gut feelings, and why it's so important moving forward into the future. So we'll be back to that topic in just a moment. Thanks for tuning in. We hope you have a great weekend.
The truth is that he caught her down in Georgetown with a Spaniard who had left his wife behind.
The technical difficulties of running a live radio show. Good night, Lee Bouton, if I said it right. Good night, Lee. Yes, JoJo's not a late start. We actually started just fine. And then apparently we got hit by some huge solar flares that knocked us way out of whack. And we spent about 20 minutes in technical difficulties, and I think that happened before you arrived. So nevertheless, yes, the time frame for these types of things does seem almost biblical as things are accelerating, and perhaps that's the reason why this kind of stuff happens, why we have these types of knockoffs off of YouTube, why all of a sudden the resonance seems to peak and the solar flares seem to do what they do is beyond me. TTYS, titties? Is that what? I don't know what that means. TTYS, titties? Michael Fontaine? Not sure. We started 4 times and a bit. That's why we're going late. So I understand anybody who's beyond their bedtime. But nevertheless, intuition is our topic tonight. If you're just joining us and you were not privy, we're going a little bit later tonight, well into the midnight hour for some of you, as is expected. When we have these types of issues, we pushed forward and we got to the end. And that's what we're going to do in all situations, not just tonight's broadcast, but our day tomorrow, our week next week, our month and year ahead. We're going to continue pushing on, resilient, emerging stronger, and more intuitive, perhaps. But how can we harness that muscle?
I'm sure most of us, including myself, by the way, fantasized as children about becoming a superhero one day. Well, it turns out that it actually is possible to do just that. Let me give you a few examples. In his book entitled The Social Animal, David Brooks discussed U.S. soldiers who had been to Iraq and Afghanistan on multiple deployments and got to a point, some of them, where they could look down a street just like this and be able to predict with incredible accuracy if there was an IED, an improvised explosive device. They could predict if there was a bomb on that street. That's like magic to me. And the most interesting part is when you ask these soldiers how they did it, they couldn't answer the question. They didn't know themselves. They said things like, it felt cold, or it felt wrong. It's like...
Now, do you get that kind of a feeling that these military personnel are describing as getting? Do you get this kind of cold feeling? I had no idea what that acronym meant, and now that you've said it, thank you, Z Rabbit. Now I understand. But when it comes to the intuition, when you get that gut feeling. Yes, what's on AJ's mind, right? No, I had no idea. I read it, like fuck you then. When I just read these things out loud, it's not my mind in the gutter, JoJo's. It really isn't. Yes, when I read these things, sometimes they just roll off the tongue. But that's kind of how things pop up in your gut feelings. Sometimes they just roll out of your stomach. Like all of a sudden you might be talking to somebody and you might just get this awkward feeling, kind of cold, as the military is saying they're able to look down a road and they're able to identify where the danger zones are. If you're in the military or if you've served in the military, first of all, thank you for your service. And second of all, please put that in the chat room by saying, I'm military and I've experienced what that study is saying regarding the intuition of the soldier. Because to me, that is incredible information. One, talking about the IRA again. Yes, here we go with the IRA. Sorry, thought you were done. No, Michael, we're still going. We're still going. But thank you for your titties.
Like magic to me. In his book entitled Blink,
it's like magic to me. It really is. And what better way to say that? It's like magic to me.
Blink, Malcolm Gladwell discussed a very well-known tennis coach by the name of Vic Braden. Been coaching and playing tennis for 20, 30, even 40 years, got to a point where he could watch a tennis match on television and be able to predict with near 100% accuracy if the player was about to double fault, but before the player had even touched the ball.
Now, I feel that same sense of intuition sometimes during sporting events, especially with I get into the Green Bay Packers. And I've watched Packer games, especially when they play the Bears, where you can anticipate the play. Now, that anticipation has to come from experience. And I know I have a very good friend, bless his heart, in Wisconsin, who is not a Packer fan. He doesn't put on the jerseys. He doesn't wear the cheese head. He doesn't pay attention to the Packers, even when the Packers are winning and about to take the playoffs. It's not on the top of his priority list. So that lack of not allow him to have the same intuition that the Packer fan feels when Aaron Rodgers is setting up for, a Hail Mary to win the game in the end zone. And if you're a fan of a different football team, you understand the feeling. But that feeling of that particular intuition, or like this tennis coach who is able to 100% accuracy predict the outcome of the match, it did so with experience. So we have to take the things that we know in our own experiences into our own intuition insight. We have to take how experienced we are. If it's driving a car and you suddenly have the intuition that something is about to go seriously wrong, you have to bank on the experience, the same type of experience that gives you the understanding of that quarterback sneak, that football play. This is very, very important. And as we harness it, as we exercise it and challenge it as a muscle, we can work through those types of critical thinking when intuition and insight means the most to us.
That's like superhuman. But yet again, he went through the video footage afterwards to try to determine the patterns that he was seeing with his eyes to make those predictions, and he could not find those patterns. Or maybe closer to home, any parent can look at her child and know in an instant what she's thinking. And of course, we've all driven on these California freeways, and we see a car in front of us in traffic, and we know that that car is about to change lanes. But before they've even activated their blinker, we saw something. We didn't know what it was.
And again, those are those instincts and those insights and that intuition that's within all of us. And I don't remember who it was earlier that pointed out, especially in parents. You're absolutely right, especially in parents. Thank you again, Michael Fontaine. I appreciate it. They call sphincter clinch, tighten up. Yes, 7 seconds delay. Maybe we're back a little earlier. Yes, maybe fear can increase your intuition, says my life. Army sister, and yes, that's true, confirming what we said about that Army situation where soldiers use that intuition against the enemy. Dirk, magic is technology that you don't understand. Dirk, I think it was Arthur C. Clarke who said, any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. And I totally agree with you on your point. Maya C. says, anytime I've ever almost hit a deer, I get a weird feeling within seconds before that prompts me to simply just let off the gas. And they've just skimmed over the hood. Maya C., I can relate to that so much. Driving on winter nights through the woods of the deep woods of Wisconsin, where all of a sudden something happens inside your stomach, your gut, your intuition kicks in. And maybe it's something as simple as your experience of driving in heavily wooded areas where the conditions are right that kicks that intuition into gear, perhaps, Maya C. That's what I think it could possibly be. But again, that muscle was exercised and you were able to let off the gas at just the right moment when it could have been an absolute disaster for both you and the deer. JoJo's hair stands on the end for her, she says, and that's a great signal. That's a great indicator. And I've felt that too, and I'm sure some of you can agree. We felt those hair-raising moments where something inside our gut went, something's going to really happen here. Something's about to happen. How many times have you said that inside your head? My life says I've been driving once, and I felt like I had to get off the road and go home, which I did. It was so weird, but I didn't question it. And sometimes we can't even question these things. And I've even had experiences where I'm about ready to leave. I've got the car in the driveway. I've hit reverse. I'm backing out of the driveway, and suddenly, for whatever reason, I put the car back in park, and I go back inside for maybe my wallet. Maybe I forgot what it was that I needed to take with me. But for whatever reason, I didn't pull out of the driveway at that moment. And then maybe, that couple minutes turned into a couple more minutes. And by the time you traveled down the road, you're faced with a horrific accident, which would have been right in the time frame, because the police aren't even there yet, of where you may have been. So that's that bridge between the brain and science we spoke about in the first half of the show, where sometimes our intuition is so subconscious that things are happening for that reason. And as we've heard about in these Ripon Rabbit Hole broadcasts before, everything happens for a reason. There are no mistakes. And everything we have as a human in a natural form is been synthesized, so you will get lazy phone versus telepathy, natural medicine against synthesized medicine, etc., says Dirk. And you're absolutely right. We live in this, smarter technology, which perhaps cannot have the intuition to anticipate a crisis. That's the big problem with driverless cars. You cannot anticipate the crisis. And I think that's where our own human intuition needs to be defined and refined. And again, comes down to frequencies, waves, and particles, says Dirk. And that's what we're going to talk about tomorrow night with magic frequencies. These are used for good, and how they can be used for bad purposes as well. There's an app that you can download that helps you train your remote viewing skills. Interesting, Earth Daughter. Pretty cool. I'm going to have to look for that as well. Ollie or Greg, I have avoided car accidents many times that I should never have. I've stopped at a green light for no reason other than my gut, and a large truck ran the light. I probably would not have survived. Ollie or Greg, those are the types of moments. Those are the inner voices that sometimes aren't even loud enough for us to hear. Those are subconscious. Like, why did you stop at the green light? You had no idea. It wasn't like you had that premonition. It wasn't like your sixth sense actually subconsciously kicked in and forced you to stop. This is very subconscious, and that's what I find very fascinating about the reasons and why intuition kicks in. Earth Daughter's saying, I've done that too, and I think a lot of us have, where we've just, missed that accident just by moments. And, exactly, says Maya C. And when it should, that's my motto. That's absolutely it. I play on an app called Are You Psychic? I'm going to have to look up that one too. Just missing the green light, Dirk says, missing your wallet, missing whatever, is just a way of missing inner self to talk to your ego-driven version. I like that. It's just a holdup. It's a pause. It's like almost like you have a remote and you just hit pause in that moment. A few times I would have been telling my ex-wife while driving on the thoroughway, watch this guy. He's going to turn left in about 2 miles down. and she'd freak out when it happens. I think we all do. When our intuitions kick in, when you let off the gas and you finally come around the bend and you see that buck sitting in the middle of the road, or all of a sudden he jumps and just a half second too long on that take in the foot could have been that deer in the windshield. So these are important things. This is an important muscle. This is an important gland. This is an important tool within all of us, which exists in all of us. Many of you at the beginning of the hour already felt, at the beginning of 2 hours actually tonight, felt that you had the intuition within you. Some of you may have gotten mixed reactions on our on-air experiment this evening, but nevertheless, I seriously believe this is something that's in all of us.
But we knew that car was about to change lanes, and then sure enough, the car changes lanes. These are intuitions. These are intuitions that we develop when we have familiarity with a given situation. So it turns out that the subconscious mind can make roughly 10 million observations in any given setting. Even all of you here today, you've made countless observations, 10 million perhaps. The seat you're sitting in, the people around you, a piece of lint on the floor, a scent in the air, if it's hot or cold, how you feel with different thoughts. These are all observations that you're making all the time. But at the same time, your conscious mind can only keep track of about 40. It's incredible. It actually depends on the research. It ranges from 40 to about 150. But let's just use 10 million in this unconscious mind to 100 in the conscious mind to make the numbers easy. That means that 99.999% of the observations you make, you're not even consciously aware of. Well, it turns out that there's a lot of research. There's literally been an explosion of research in this area over the past 15 years or so, under umbrellas like neuroscience and cognitive psychology, behavioral economics. And the scientists who are conducting these studies and doing this research, and also the authors who are writing about this research, tend to focus on, number one, understanding the immense capacity of our unconscious mind, or two, the implications for companies who are trying to use this information to help them market their products and services more effectively, or three, how we can in fact protect ourselves from the snap decisions and the snap judgments that we make as a result of these unconscious observations. Right? These intuitions come from the 10 million unconscious observations, not the 100 conscious ones. But those reasons aren't the reasons for my presentation today. The reasons for my presentation today is to use it. Let's leverage it. Let's leverage the capabilities of our unconscious mind and our awareness of how it actually functions to further our own goals and our own aspirations. Adrian de Groot was famous for doing a series of studies in the 1940s, 50s, and 60s around the game of chess. And in one study in particular, he had chess novices and chess masters involved, and in both cases they were shown a chessboard of a chess game halfway in progress, but they were only allowed to see that chessboard for 5 seconds. Then the curtain went down, and they got a fresh board, and they had to recreate what they saw. And the chess novices, this was really a difficult task. And they got on average 4 or 5, maybe 6 pieces right. After that, they couldn't remember anymore. But of course, for the chess masters, this was easy because they had the familiarity. They could chunk the information down. They saw the storyline of the game in progress. They saw the strategy of both sides. So for them, it was very easy to recreate what they saw. And so what we learn is that intuition, these intuitions, are in fact a combination of experience and expertise. When you have experience and expertise in a given area, these intuitions, these almost superhuman intuitions, come automatically. So the question is, what's the fastest way to get experience and expertise in a given setting? And the answer to that question is immersion. When you immerse yourself into something, you automatically get that experience and expertise much, much quicker. So intuitively, it makes a lot of sense that if you want to learn French, the best way to do that is to go to France and live there for a period of time. You would learn far more by living in France than by taking French lessons every week for months or even years. Or if you wanted to learn to become a snowboarder, this one's fascinating. If you want to learn to snowboard, you're much better off going 5 days in a row than going 1 day every week for 5 weeks. In both cases, you're on the mountain for 5 days. But you see, when you do it all in one time, it gives your unconscious mind an opportunity to see those patterns, to organize all that new information and start to understand. You move up that learning curve way, way quicker.
Now, that to me is actually fascinating, almost superhuman in its own. When you think about the snowboard example, obviously it's next to impossible right now for us to go immerse ourselves in Paris to learn French. But the reality is, when you think about immersing ourselves during this special time that we have in our, ability to focus periods of time, we can immerse ourselves in something to give us that experience, to give us that intuition that could help us once we emerge, as Cynthia Sue Larson in her Reality Shifters email this week talked about, how we're cocoons and how we're going to emerge as beautiful butterflies from all this. And I thought that was a really great analogy. It's interesting, Maya C., that you bring this up. Earlier in this show, she says, I told my hubby I was having deja vu, and after you played the left-right brain clip, then you said deja vu at about halfway, and I looked at him like, hey, did I just manifest that? Laughing out loud. Yes, of course, we're talking about the Deja Vu show happening Saturday night, April 11th. You'll want to make sure that you're here for that, Maya C. Lots of laughter coming in as well from Earth Daughter. Patterning, another big important part as well, Dirk. Patterning is larger than people do actually want to see, and people want that things to go as they go, like JoJo said earlier on. She just hates the change. And it's to your point, Dirk, where there is a flux that shifts all of that around. And you're absolutely right. We cannot prevent that because we all live in these cycles and these patterns. And I couldn't agree with you more. So that's an excellent point, Dirk. Thank you for bringing that up. Michael Fontaine says, I was watching Jeopardy, and the final Jeopardy category was 4-letter words. I yelled out, dude. My wife said, what? I said, dude. The answer was dude. I knew the answer before the question. Michael Fontaine, you need to go on Jeopardy. You really do. Sabian also agreeing with you, Dirk, on that. Patterns. And did I already say patterns? Repetition sometimes is key in those cycles, Sabian. Absolutely. Sabian, it's all patterns, structures, and constructs, says Dirk. Couldn't agree with you more. I could not agree with you more. This is really what it comes down to.
And so my challenge to all of you is to take a more active role in your own lives. With this knowledge, take a more active role and use immersion. Incorporate intentional immersion into your lives in the areas in which you're passionate. Because if you do that, you're going to develop superhuman intuitions that will allow you to advance much, much quicker. And in doing that, you will take one giant step to becoming a superhero of your own.
And I think he's spot on. I think we can all become superheroes of our own, especially with this time, to immerse ourselves within the things that we want to grow, the things that we want to excel at, the things that we want to be able to use our intuition, our insight, and our instinct as these new butterflies that emerge. In the world that we're going to re-enter, intuition perhaps could be the only thing needed in the days, weeks, months, and years ahead. Perhaps intuition will be worth more than gasoline. Perhaps insight will be worth more than gold.
I believe that we can come a long way if we start by tuning into this one invisible gift that we all have, but not all of us are consciously using.
I actually believe that too, this is a gift that we all have that we are not consciously using. So my challenge to you for hanging in there as we kick off the weekend right, will you do something to challenge your inner voice? Will you perhaps exercise your muscle? If you're willing to do that, put a 1 in the chat room. I'd like to see if you're willing to take this challenge, and throughout the next 7 days until we meet next Thursday again, are you willing to listen to your gut? Are you willing to take the challenge to tune into your inner voice? Perhaps your sixth sense? Kreskin, the great mind reader of the 70s, 80s, and 90s, the great Kreskin, liked to refer to the sixth sense, also commonly referred to as ESP, which by definition is extrasensory perception. But if you're like me and you believe that we all possess this unique ability together, then by Kreskin's definition, perhaps more suitable, as he puts ESP as being extremely sensitive perception. ESP, extremely sensitive perception. And I believe we all are blessed with the art of perception. Some of us are extremely perceptive. Some of us embrace that inner voice. Maya C says, you got to look at change like this. Is there a single change in the past you haven't made it through yet? ? Why then think this change will be any different? Maya C, words of wisdom coming from your insight. I appreciate you tonight. One's coming in from Stober 51, Dark Wolf's Den, Earth Daughter with ones, accepting the challenge. Maya C, 1, My Life with a 1, Ollier Greg with a 1. I'm going to hold you to that challenge, and next Thursday, as we kick off next weekend, we're going to talk about it again. We're going to find out exactly what we did to challenge that inner voice, what we did to exercise this brilliant gift, this awesome muscle that we have the opportunity to harvest, to train, and to exercise right now. For the next 7 days, we can key in on these instincts. Very important. Either way, I hope that you take a little morsel, a little something away from tonight's broadcast that you can apply to these times, these days, these weeks, these months, these years ahead, as we explore that rabbit hole for our benefit, our well-being, and our increased awareness as humans sharing together in humanity. Thanks, Sabian. You have yourself a good one. We did it! Ha ha ha! That's right. We spent another Thursday night together. Give yourselves a round of applause for being smart enough to be here. I'll be back again tomorrow night as we dive deep down the rabbit hole into the world of magic frequencies. That's tomorrow night, Friday, April 10th, as we take an amazing look at frequencies and how they're used in both good and bad ways. Then Saturday, April 11th, I'll be back deja vu style. If you get the feeling that we've done this episode before, that's deja vu. You know, I looked up deja vu in the dictionary. It said, haven't you looked this up before? We're going to dive down that amazing rabbit hole Saturday, April 11th, starting at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central. Then we'll end out the weekend on Sunday, April 12th, with our special look at ancient Ripon. This is going to be an interesting topic as we continue our series on hidden ancient locations. And this time, we look at ancient Ripon, Wisconsin. So we hope that you join us all weekend long. If you haven't done so already, hop on over to going to be there in just a moment in the backstage VIP connecting with you for the beginning. Where the conversation continues. Enjoyed this program this evening? Please do video to the channel. Wherever you are, good morning, good evening, or good day, whatever the case may be. Meet again. Take care of yourselves and each other. Good night.
Once there was an old man living in an old house down by the lake. Rumor says the man was hunting for rabbits just for fun. Since the day the rabbit disappeared for a while, then came back and cast a spell over the old man. So he looks like a rabbit too now.
Absolute beginners came to Georgetown. They were wearing Harris tweed and pork pie hats. They'd slit your throat and throw you in the gutter. But it's all you can expect from men like that. The ladies wear perfume, teach them is to scare. That you know little, I suppose. It's a magical and mystical performance. You perambulate right with your pocket. Side, and if you're French, he had contemplated. The time for him had long since gone its way. Of the city he would shuffle while spinning on his heels and chewing beef. He had promised her he'd be vegetarian, but he could not control his lust for meat. Sensation big with child, the truth it did not matter. down and cut her with his smile. Last time he was seen was by the pawn shop. He traded 2 gold teeth for a sack of corn, and he would plant it on the outskirts of the city as a warning that he would someday return. He said he never found her and he's still looking. It is said he searches rivers for some sign, but the truth is that he caught her down in Georgetown.
Seen the term out-of-body experience or astral projection, so to speak, lucid dreams, being able to leave